soul. Never know your heart.
Make me smile, make me frown.
Ain't no love in no heart of city, that's what they tell me. I'm just waiting on somebody to show me.
Yeah, Dr. Height, you're live now.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. This is another episode of Education Pulse, and I'm glad to join you as we do every other Saturday to talk about updates, to give updates and talk about what's happening in and around the school district. We have an exciting show today, and that our show will include the president of the Board of Education, Joyce Wilkerson. She'll be joining momentarily. We also have another board member, Dr. Angela McIver, who will talk a lot about the work that the board has been doing around what they're describing as their goals and guardrails. This is exciting work for the school district and want the listeners to hear that. We also have 3 new board members, and 2 of those 3 members will be joining the show later in the broadcast, and we're pleased to have join us those two new board members and looking forward to a conversation with two of the three new board members. And then we'll conclude with a student, as we always do, and that student won our first, not the first annual oratorical competition, but the first competition that talked about our Philadelphia, our future. And so the winner of that contest, we had 6 finalists who competed yesterday. It was hosted by Chill Moody. It was a fantastic event. And those young people, the winner of that will be on and will actually recite the piece of literature that he used in the oratorical contest, and he will recite that as a part of this broadcast. And so I see that we have Joyce on this morning. President Wilkinson, thank you for joining us this morning.
It's great to be here. I had some technical difficulties.
That's all right. You made it. You made it. So before we get into the program, Joyce, wanted to talk because you and I, more than a year ago, we went to actually WURD, and it was the council president's show. And that was when I was first introduced to Cody Anderson. And I know a week ago, we all awoke to the unfortunate news of his passing, and just wanted to talk. One of the reasons that we have this show, and it's been going for almost a year now, was because of Cody. And I would add the council president, but because of Cody, because he helped introduce me and the school district of Philadelphia and our voice to the listening audience here at WURD. But can you talk real briefly? And I know you have a history with Cody that goes back further than my history with him, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to just reflect on that a little bit this morning.
First, I want to offer my condolences to Cody's family. That like you say, we awakened last week, and it's like Cody's gone, and it's such a loss. I can't think of a more decent person in Philadelphia. I met Cody probably back in the 1990s, early 1990s. I was working for John Street. I was his chief of staff when he was council president. And that was back in the day, and Cody was running WHAT. Mary Mason would cover city council meetings, and that was a whole adventure. But it, I don't come from Philly, so I didn't understand Black Talk Radio. But Cody was so committed to there being a voice in a place where the Black community in Philadelphia in particular could share ideas. And one of the big differences I see now between all the social media and what Cody brought to the table was just a real decency. So we had some really tough conversations, but there was always a welcoming place to go to share ideas. And it was because of Cody. Cody was such a wonderfully decent person.
Yeah, no, I could not agree more, Joyce. And I also share my condolences with the family, just as I did last week. And one of the things that I remembered last week was no matter, and since we've been on the radio, because we haven't been in person in schools, and one of the reasons we did this was to make sure we were able to get our message out, particularly to individuals who don't get it the traditional ways, and using Black radio as a mechanism to do that. And no matter how difficult the week was leading up to the Saturday show, I always looked forward to that conversation on Saturday with Cody. And he actually, he would actually put things in perspective in a way that allowed me to refocus and to become recommitted to the work that is so critically important, and that's serving our children and our families. And I'm grateful for the time that I had with him. It was much shorter than your time with him, but nonetheless, the fact that I got to experience such a tremendous individual, and an individual whose legacy of service and community and most importantly action will live on, and I think that will be his legacy. And so we want to carry on his legacy with education.
And when I think about it, I think about Kyle and Billy, his sons, as part of his legacy. You know,
Yeah.
they're both involved in communication. Both, you know, shared their father's, you know, sense of commitment and decency, and so. And the last time I saw Cody, the last time I talked with Cody, he was talking about this show, and he was talking about how excited he was, and he was talking about students that you had on the show. And so anyway, it's a huge loss, and hopefully we'll carry on and do Cody proud.
I hope so, and it is a tremendous loss. And he was most impressed with the students. And as I indicated earlier, we will close this show with a student, and we're trying to make that a tradition here on Education Pulse, that the voice and highlighting the tremendous talents of the young people that we serve here in the city of Philadelphia becomes so critically important. Wanted to open up the show as we always do, and Madam Board President, thank you for joining us, and thank you for remaining through the whole show. I hope they told you you'll be here the whole time. And we have some of your colleagues coming on, and two of the three new members, both Lisa Sally, who's a new member. I'm very excited about her joining, and her experience, particularly in the development community and business, will bring an aspect to the board that I think is very important. And then the other person is Cecilia Thompson, and Cecilia has been an advocate, particularly for parents, and for parents, especially with children with special needs. And so we'll hear from those two individuals coming up in the show. And briefly, we will hear, in a few minutes, we will hear from a current board member, well, a former board member who's still a board member, Dr. Angela McIver, and she's going to talk a lot about the goals and guardrails. But as I typically do on the show, want to begin with just some highlights from the week, and I do think that this is important. And I want to start by acknowledging, Joyce, as you know, it's been nearly a year since we closed school buildings for in-person learning. And all of us have, this dealing with this pandemic has impacted all of us in certain ways, and many of us, particularly in the educational world, had to adapt to a 100% virtual environment. And we were hoping to open our school buildings for pre-K through second grade students in a hybrid model on Monday, which is the day after tomorrow. But we are in mediation, as I've shared both in the press and on the show. There's a city-led third-party mediation process between the school district of Philadelphia. It includes the city of Philadelphia and the Federation of Teachers, the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers, or the PFT. And it's based on a phased reopening of our city's public schools. And we think that that is nearing conclusion. And so, Joyce, I know we're all excited about getting schools reopened, getting children back into some form of in-person learning. We're going to have details on that finalized over the next few days, and we will announce publicly at a joint press conference with the City of Philadelphia, the School District of Philadelphia, and the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers on Monday, March 1st at 1 p.m. None of us could have imagined that this was going to be the circumstances or the predicament that we were in for such a prolonged period of time. And I was speaking with a group of students just last week. And Joyce, I know just as Cody talked about students, one thing that you and I know, particularly from our experiences, is that when we hear from students, it helps to ground the reason why we do this work, especially you as a volunteer as on the Board of Education. But I had the opportunity to hear from students on several different occasions last week. One was something that I do on a regular basis. It's through what I call the Superintendent Student Advisory Council. Another was I had the opportunity to visit with a fifth grade class at Ethan Allen, Miss Anderson's class at Ethan Allen. So shout out to Miss Anderson and Miss Kay, who also works with Miss Anderson, who's a teacher who supports the children with special needs in that class. In addition, I had an opportunity to present to the February Teacher of the Month and to acknowledge that teacher in front of her students. And that is Miss Antoinette Davis, who is an English non-teacher and a teacher leader at the Arts Academy of Benjamin Rush, and all her students, past, current, and former students, were on to celebrate her. And so had the opportunity to hear, and as I was speaking with all of these groups of students, doing those opportunities, one thing that has been pretty remarkable during this process is that their ability to uplift and inspire each other, and me, share their perspectives on the pandemic. And we tend to focus on a lot that's wrong. These young people are focused on how can they build and support each other. They acknowledge that this is not a perfect situation, and a situation that many of them want to be in for a prolonged period of time. But they were incredible in their support to each other. And Joyce, I know you've seen that with our 2 student board members.
Oh the student board member, I love all my board members, but I love the students most of all. They really do bring a grounding to what it is that we're doing. At our last meeting, they were asking, what about graduation? Are we going to be able to graduate? And it's a way for us to pivot away from some of the, the challenges we face, the budget and all the other stuff that is a critical part of governing public education, and helps us remember why it is that we're at the table. That they're actual students, they have lives, they have dreams, and so I love our student board members who sit at the table with us and provide perspective that keeps us focused.
Yeah, and so I think you're so right, and they continuously bring us back to why this work is so important, and also what's important to them. I mean, to your point, they just went right to the point. Like, what about graduations, and what about proms, and what about things that are really important to us? And I think we have to. They're continuously reminding us of those things that are critically important to them. And despite the real challenges that they deal with on a day-to-day basis, one thing that they have demonstrated, particularly during this pandemic, is their amazing spirit of perseverance and resilience. And regardless of what they are facing, they continue to come back and continue to want to support and continue to want to lend their voice to the work that we all do in support of them. And so to all the students, I say thank you. And as Cody would say, I'm not so sure, Doc, how many would be up at this hour on a Saturday morning, but nonetheless, I want to say thank you for being amazing and courageous young people as you and your families try to navigate these challenging times. And as I indicated, one example of that we're going to feature at the end of the show, and that's that he won the first place yesterday in the district's oratorical contest, and we'll meet him and hear his winning performance. But today, among guests, I know we have to go to a break in a minute, Joyce, and so we'll go to a break. And after the break, I want you and one of our board members, Dr. Angela McIver, to talk a little bit about the goals and guardrails and why that work is so important. And so first and foremost, I want to once again, Joyce, thank you for the work that you do in leading the Board of Education as the president of the Board of Education. And I want to thank Dr. Angela McIver, who will be joining us after the break. So we'll go to break, and then we'll come back and introduce Dr. Angela McIver, and both she and the board president will talk a little bit about the board's goals and guardrails.
This is Dave from Liz. I want to take a moment to express our feelings on the loss of Cody Anderson. Cody was a member of the store team. I've been friends with Cody for a long, long time. We used to do commercials every Saturday together, twice a day, whether he was away somewhere and he'd call me or I would call into the station. And they weren't just commercials, they were conversations. My wife used to even get into them and say, "Hello, handsome," and Cody would always laugh. Cody was a rare individual. And what I mean by rare, not too many human beings are humble, sincere, smart, passionate about their family, passionate about their work, and loved people. It breaks my heart that Cody had to go so quickly. He was a great listener. He'd answer questions. I used to listen to the show, the way he would talk to people. Not too many people like Cody. So I just want to say We're going to miss him. I'm going to miss my partner in commercials. May he rest in peace.
Recovery starts with a call. Pennsylvania's Substance Use Disorder Hotline is staffed by real people who are trained to help. They're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They'll get you or your loved one into treatment regardless of your access to insurance. If you or someone you know is suffering from addiction, call 1-800-662-HELP. Recovery starts with a call.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Okay, Her's new fire potato chips and cheese curls, they are spicy. Whew, they're hottest snacks yet. Hold on. Whew. But you know, it's not just heat. There's some nice sweet and savory stuff going on too. Ooh, there's that heat again. It burns, but it burns so tasty. Ooh, that's hot. Find Her's Fire Snacks at your store today. Whew. Taste the flavor, feel the heat, break out the Her's.
WURD Radio celebrates Black History Month with Black Artist Story 365. Brought to you by AARP, Thomas Jefferson, and New Voices for Reproductive Justice.
Welcome to Black Artist Story 365. My name is Envy McKee. Get into this episode where we explore the art and artistry of Trinidadian American, Tony Award-winning actor, voice actor, singer, dancer, composer, choreographer, costume designer, visual artist, and director, Jeffrey Holder. Part 1. King star Uncle Jeffrey was an August Leo, born Jeffrey Lamont Holder of Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, the youngest of 5 children of Louise de France and Arthur Holder, who had immigrated from Barbados. Bosco Holder taught Jeffrey painting and dancing and recruited him to join a small folkloric dance troupe he had formed, the Holder Dancing Company. Bosco was 16, listen, and Jeffrey was 7. Okay? When Bosco left for London, Jeffrey was left in charge of the dance company as its director and lead performer. Soon after arriving in Brooklyn, he joined the Catherine Dunham's dance school, where he taught folkloric forms for 2 years. From 1955 to 1956, he performed with the Metropolitan Opera Ballet as a principal dancer. He left the ballet to make his Broadway debut in the Harold Arlen and Truman Capote musical House of Flowers. While working on House of Flowers, he met Alvin Ailey, with whom he later worked extensively, and his future wife and muse, Carmen de Lavalade. After the show closed, he starred in an all-black production of Waiting for Godot in 1957. As a choreographer, because you know he's got all them lists of things that he was masterful at, Holder created dance pieces for many companies, including Alvin Ailey, American Dance Theater, for which he provided choreography, music, and costumes for Prodigal Prince in 1967, and the Dance Theater of Harlem, for which he provided choreography, music, and costumes for Douglas in 1974. He was director, costume designer, and choreographer, as we mentioned, in The Wiz in 1974, and in 1978, he directed and choreographed the Broadway musical Timbuktu. So that's it for this episode of Black Artist Story 365. My name is Envy McKee. To hear more, tune into The Envy McKee Show, Friday nights, 7 to 10 p.m., right here on WURD.
Black Artist Story 365 was brought to you by AARP Pennsylvania, Thomas Jefferson, and New Voices for Reproductive Justice. You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent black media.
And we're back, Dr. Height.
Great, and thank you. And our next guest, we are joined during this section of Educational Pulse by our board president, Joyce Wilkerson. And our next guest is Dr. Angela McIver. And Dr. McIver is a member of the Board of Education and has been a member since the board came back to local control. And so thank you, Dr. McIver, for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Indeed. And I know you're joining with the board president, and I wanted the two of you to actually talk a little bit about like the goals and guardrails very briefly. And then Dr. McIver, I want you to talk about progress monitoring, because that's a term that we're using now. But either you or Joyce could talk about the goals and guardrails first, very briefly, and then I want you, Dr. McIver, to talk about progress monitoring so people will understand what we mean by that.
I'll start. Goals and Guardrails is a plan adopted by the board at its December meeting last year. The new plan calls for the board to focus its time and work on student achievement in everything that we do. The plan's simple because it starts by asking a real basic question, which is, why do we exist? And it's something that has just a very crucial answer. And the answer is our schools exist to provide every student with the tools and experiences they need to reach their fullest potential. And while this might seem obvious, it's something that's gotten lost over the last 10, 15 years because the district was always in a crisis mode. Dr. Height, you know that better than probably better than anybody. And so we would focus on, we made a lot of improvements. So the 4-year graduation rate is up. We have fewer students dropping out. We don't have persistently dangerous schools. We have more schools that are doing well, but we're still not where we need to be. And so Goals and Guardrails is a tool that the board is using in conjunction with you, Dr. Height, to focus all of our time on the issues of students' achievement. And to do this, one of the things we realize is that we've got to change how we operate as a board. And so if historically you've looked at our board meetings, we've spent a lot of time talking about this contract or that contract, but we know that when the district was surveyed, when the School Reform Commission was surveyed, they asked the board, how much time do you spend talking about student achievement, our kids learning? And the answer was only 10% of our time. So we were always chasing these survival issues and never really focusing on student achievement. And as a result of looking at how we're doing in comparison to other school districts, it's like we got a lot of work to do. We need to be honest about what's going on in Philadelphia. And so the board's adopted Goals and Guardrails. We're going to do monitoring at our monthly meetings, not spend as much time talking about individual contracts the district enters into. And so our vision's clear. We want to ensure that all students are given an education that allows them to thrive, succeed, and lead in a global world.
Go ahead, Joy.
Our goals are simple. So we're focusing on literacy. We want all children to be able to read at grade level. Math, we want them to perform at grade level. And we want to make sure that when they graduate, they're ready for college and career. So we've got 3 goals. We're going to repeat them constantly. That's going to be our focus for the next 5 years.
Thank you. And I want to congratulate you, Joyce, and Angela, and all of the other board members, because in working in other states with other boards of education, boards across the country profess that achievement is important, but very few talk about achievement as a part of their governance and as a part of their work. And the fact that the goals and guardrails drive us to not only the academic things that are important, but also those other things that are contextual to the importance of children learning, like extracurricular activities, and making sure that we are providing equitable, we are approaching this from an equity lens. I mean, those types of things are equally important. Dr. McIver, I saw you smiling when Joyce talked about the math goal, and and I know that one thing that many people are hearing now, and they're saying, like, what is this thing that we're talking about in terms of progress monitoring? And I know you just facilitated a session on Thursday, did a wonderful job around us looking at the data in math, for instance, around the math goal. Can you talk a little bit about progress monitoring and what that entails?
Sure. So one thing I want to say before I talk about the progress monitoring is that I want people to recognize how seismic a shift this is in what we're doing on the board. And my daughter asked me yesterday, how long are you going to be on the board? And I was like, I want to be here for 5 years to see this through, or as long as the mayor will have me, because it really, really has changed things that make all of us excited. But our Thursday action meeting focused on math, which is my area, and it was and what was so wonderful about monitoring is that we are able to as a board, have the district share with us how every school in the district is doing on meeting these goals, and then talking about what are the reasons why we are seeing students achieve or not achieve. And all of those conversations then help us think about how do we allocate resources? How do we ensure equity? You know, what do we do with schools that are struggling the most? And we've never had those conversations before. So I think that's just so important and amazing. And I think we're going to see really big changes and movement in the district. We'll be able to move the needle because we're focused on this.
Yeah, indeed. And I think that whole process, and because many of us in education have had like data protocols, for instance, but we don't really have those at the system level, right? So you have it at the classroom level, at the school level, and that process actually allows us to then ask the critically important questions. And that's what the board was doing on Thursday in the progress monitoring session. They were like who is being impacted? Who are the schools, to your point? What's happening? And why is that happening? And then how are you going to address it? And then making and talking about that from the perspective of a governance level changes the work that even happens within the district at every level. And so I just really appreciate that level of focus and engaging in that work. How long did it take to put this together? Angela, you talked about it being a seismic change in how the board does the work. Can either of you comment on how long the board has been working on like this new structure?
Sure. This has been, and Joyce, correct me if I'm wrong, it's almost 2 years, you know, of us starting to have these conversations. What is our role? I mean, you know, as we all came on as new board members, understanding what your role is as a board member took some time for us to kind of settle into that position. But Joyce, am I right? It's been almost 2 years.
I think June will be, you know, when we, you know, started on the journey, thinking about what governance means. So we're closing in on 2 years.
Great. And I know we have another member who has joined, and go ahead, Joyce.
I want Angela to talk about guardrails, because people who don't, we know that's about math, reading, graduating, but guardrails are, as I've come to learn from Angela, are just as important, and so I want to have Angela spend a little time.
Very important point. Angela?
I would love to, and you know, I would almost say they are more important. You know, my area is math and how to get students to achieve in math, and I really believe that you cannot do that unless you have the environment in the school that speak to that. So our guardrails are those non-negotiables that we want to make sure that every school has, and there are 4 of them. And the first is, you know, a safe and welcoming environment, welcoming and supportive schools, ensuring that every child, every parent, every staff member feels like that school is their home. The second is enriching and well-rounded experiences for students in schools. And this, I think, is, in my opinion, one of the most important things, because when children figure out what their gifts are, right? Whether it's athletics or music or art or dance, they become better learners all around. And so ensuring that students have opportunities no matter what school they go to. The third is partnering with parents and family members and making that big connection, making sure that our families feel connected to the schools. And the fourth one, which I think is critical, and we see this in progress monitoring, is addressing the systemic racist practices that make some schools perpetually or consistently underperforming, and addressing those practices that need to be dismantled.
Fantastic. Thank you for that description, Dr. McIver. And I think thank you for also talking about the guardrails, because to your point, it's equally important. And actually, we heard that from the 2 student board members. Mm-hmm. Like, we were going to focus on math, and they were interested in, like, hey, wait, will graduations happen? Will there be proms? And so it speaks to the things that are important to young people. And as young people said in one of my student advisory meetings, some of those things for them are the things that are representative of school. I mean, if we're only talking about like the academics and English and math, and for many of our young people, we would be missing the things that are really important to them. So I know we're running up on another break, but before we go to break, I know we have two new board members who have recently joined the Board of Education, and those individuals have joined us this morning. So I'd like to, at this time, introduce those two new members. First is Lisa Sally. Board Member Sally, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you and good morning.
And I think that we also have Board Member Cecilia Thompson, who may be available by phone. Board Member Thompson, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Indeed. And so, Board Member Thompson, I want to start with you. And Dr. McIver, thank you for being on this morning, and thank you for talking about the progress monitoring. Joyce has committed to staying on throughout the meeting, as a good board president would. But I want to talk about the first question for both Cecilia and Lisa, and want to really talk about, like, why did you want to become a board member? And Cecilia, let's start with you.
Sure. The reason I wanted to become a board member, because for years I've always testified for families who have children with disabilities. I'm also a parent of now a young man who recently graduated from the district of a child with disabilities. And I often saw that in many of the policies, while not purposely, but special needs was always kind of swept under the rug or overlooked. And while I care about all children, and there's always individuals speaking up for English language learners and those experiencing poverty, the only time I would see special needs is if they're getting ready to sue the district, right? Because of miscommunication or whatever the problem is. So one of my things was, making sure that special education was always on the table, and providing some background for that, and also increasing parent engagement for families who aren't the regulars. And I know I was part of the regulars for quite a long time, but also maybe we can have these meetings at the local barbershop, or in the Slavic areas, in the local bakeries, or wherever the people are. Maybe we can do that shift. And I love working with the board from both sides of the table, and I'm gonna say this for one last time, and I'm not going to say it anymore, that I jokingly and affectionately say I now have more 3 minutes to advocate on behalf of all families. But it's been a blast. It's a pleasure. And for those who think this is easy, it is not easy to listen for 4 hours to you, Dr. Height, and your team, to my own team members via the members of the board, and to the families and the students who are speaking. That is very intense. It's not easy just sitting there. I have at least 5 pages worth of notes. So it's not easy for people under the sound of my voice just sitting there, because you have to use a muscle that I have not used in quite a while. But again, I want to do my best to do what I can to make sure that I, as part of the team, are making the best decisions on behalf of the students. So thank you, Dr. Height, for being patient with my questions the other night. And thank you to Board President Wilkerson, Board Member McIver, and the rest of the board members for being patient with me as I transition to this new servitude. So thank you.
So thank you, Cecilia. And we're listening to Cecilia Thompson. We just heard from Cecilia Thompson. She's a brand new board member, and we're thrilled to have her as a new member of the board. She has joined the show this morning with our board president, Joyce Wilkerson, another board member, Dr. Angela McIver, and another new board member, Lisa Sally. And we're going to come back to Lisa Sally right after we take a brief break. And then we'll come back and hear from Lisa why it was important for her to join the board as well. So we'll go to break and come back to hear from one of our new board members.
Temple University, Philadelphia's public university, is committed to meaningful change that resonates throughout our community. We are investing more than $1 million in anti-racism education and programming, including creating a Center for Anti-Racism Research, developing a bridge program for high school students in North Philadelphia, and expanding our Department of Africology and African American Studies, which is the first in the country to offer a doctoral program. Our students are the next generation of innovators and leaders championing a better tomorrow. WURD is supported by Temple University, Philadelphia's public university. At Temple, we aim to make college accessible for all. That's why we launched the Cecil B. Moore Scholars Program, a bridge program for high school students in North Philadelphia that offers pre-college support, including tutoring, career exploitation, and the opportunity to take a free course at Temple. It's part of our commitment to cultivate leaders from our city and to support all students in reaching their full potential.
Are you looking to maximize your credits and deductions this tax season? In the Moment Financial Services, owned and operated by 2 Black women, is the one-stop shop you need. They offer tax preparation, credit repair, bookkeeping, and business consulting for clients nationwide. Visit their office located in West Philadelphia or virtually from the comfort of your own home. Book your free consultation at inthemoment101.com or call 610-222-6150 today to receive $50 off your service.
Jefferson Health offers no-cost COVID-19 testing sites at St. Raymond of Pinafort Church. Testing is on Thursdays and Saturdays. A second testing location has been added at Richard Allen Preparatory Charter School. Testing is on Wednesdays and Fridays. For testing hours and more information, visit jeffersonhealth.org/community testing.
Are you tired of eating the same thing day after day? Is ordering takeout starting to get a little old? If so, then give Premium Nutrition Meals a try. With Premium Nutrition Meals, you get to select new entrees each week from several different menus, all chef-crafted, freshly prepared, and delivered right to your door. Just go to premiumnutritionmeals.com to order to earn rewards today. WURD listeners receive $10 off orders of 6 meals or more. Enter code PREMIUMWURD at checkout.
James Schuler Memorial Boxing Gym presents Around the Way Rumbling, an amateur boxing event Saturday, March 6th. The first bout is at 2 p.m. at James Schuler Memorial Gym, located at 750 North Brooklyn Street off of 42nd and Lancaster Avenue. Boxing saves lives, and this is the perfect time to join the gym. Monthly memberships and boxing lessons are available for ages 7 through 70. For sponsorship information, call Crystal at 717-421-0512.
You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent Black media.
And we're back, Dr. Height.
Thank you. And my next guest is another new board member, and this is the board member show today. And we're joined by our board president, Joyce Wilkerson. We were joined earlier by one of the other board members, Dr. Angela McIver. We are also hearing from the 2 new board members. Before the break, we heard from board member Cecilia Thompson, who is a brand new board member, and we're thrilled that she's chosen to do this service and provide this service to the children and citizens of Philadelphia. The other new board member is board member Lisa Sally. And board member Sally, thank you for being with us this morning as well. And can you tell us why you wanted to become a board member?
Sure. And Dr. Height, thank you for the opportunity to share with the WURD family this morning. And board member Wilkerson, it's good to see you this morning as well. 2 reasons, and I'll try to answer and happy to talk about. I hope this is not the last opportunity to chat with the WURD family about the school district, about the guardrails and the goals. Very excited about that. For me personally, I would say if I had to summarize, was interested in joining the board for two reasons. The first one is it's in my blood, is what I would say, and it's my turn now. And what I mean by that is I think about my paternal grandfather. He was actually born in 1899, and he graduated from an HBCU in South Carolina called Morris College, but he was a teacher. And he taught school in Cameron, South Carolina. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Ellery Six, but the Ellery Six is became part of the court cases in South Carolina that predated Board versus the Board of Education. So as I look across my family tree, every generation we've been very involved in strategic transformation and really demanding education and equity for education for Black children and brown children in general, and children in rural areas. So it's my turn now. I also think about, I have a niece that has newly back from an HBCU also with degrees in education and psychology, and it bothered me that she lasted only 1.5 years in the school district, right? And as I talked with her about what I call the current state of the school district, I knew that I wanted to be part of, in a very hands-on way, the transformation for quality schools across the city of Philadelphia and creating generations of children that could pursue their dreams. And so it's my turn now, right, is the reason. And I take that very serious. So not only in my blood, but I also want to be able to help children that don't share my last name or my bloodline necessarily. The second part, and that leads me to the second part, it's about what I call back to the future. And so I identify myself as a product of the Philadelphia school system. And I graduated at a time where the system worked for all socioeconomics, all abilities. And with my little Philadelphia education, I've been able to see the world and run businesses literally all over the world, working in energy and working in specialty chemicals. And what I want is other children and other families for generations to come in Philadelphia to be able to pursue their dreams. And I want to be a part of the creation and the demand for 21st century, right, schools now. And I understand we may not be there today. So with my business background, what I call back to the future, in the sense that we've done it before, now how do we drive it there?
Yeah.
And so those are my two reasons.
No, so thank you so much for that. And I know because we're running short on time, I want to once again thank both you, Board Member Sally, Lisa Sally, who's one of our new board members, Cecilia Thompson. And, oh, by the way, something I just learned the other day, both attended Girls High and graduated. Was it in the same graduating class?
Yes.
That is amazing. And I think that was completely coincidental. But by the same token, it's very important, and it signifies the importance of what you described, Board Member Sally, of getting back to the future. And so thanks to both of you. Joyce, do you want to have any final words for the two new board members this morning?
No, I'm excited to have them at the table. Lisa brings vast experience. I've already got an idea about how she can, how we can best deploy her, her background doing development, thinking about 21st century schools. Cecilia knows that, making sure that we're delivering special education services in a quality way is so important for so many of our families. So excited about having two new board members. They're bringing skills to the table, and so welcome.
Once again, welcome, and thanks to both of you. And I would actually also thank Reginald Streeter in his absence, who is the other third board member who has agreed to take on this incredible responsibility. And so once again, congratulations on being nominated and appointed, and thank you for providing this critically important service to our young people. And finally, it's my pleasure to welcome one of our standout students. And this young man participated in the school district's oratorical contest that was featured yesterday on our Facebook, along with 5 of his contemporaries who were finalists in a citywide contest with the theme titled, Our Philadelphia, Our Future. And last night we saw outstanding students from Kappa, Central, Dobbins, Parkway Center City, and WB Saul High School. He captured first place, and he's here with us today to give his award-winning speech. His name is Akili DeBrady, and he is a senior at Central High School. So good morning, Akili.
Hey, good morning. It's so great to be here.
So good to have you here. Our listeners are in for a real treat this morning. Thank you for being here. Before I ask you a few questions, can we hear your winning speech?
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, this is about my Philadelphia, my future. It's called Finally Some Good News. I brushed by the love statue in a rush to the subway, eyes catching crimson as I traced the perimeter with my stare. I've never seen the word threat across my forehead or the target carved into my back, but the stranger's glares remind me they are there, so I hurry, head on a swivel, hood down, hands visible, listening intently for any dissenting notes in the chaotic roar of city streets, trudging through the trenches, the war zone, Philadelphia. Our children can't see their city's beauty through the media haze and their haste to call them unsafe. That's why I want to make our creativity clear in darkened communities, giving off our glow in workshops, showcases, competitions, and finally some good news. I want the youth to clear the air in a media movement following our stars, a never-ending documentary meant to propel their self-esteem with their dreams, spotlight our brilliance to escape our shadow, open doors to make neighborhoods safer. Seeing others with artistic aspirations will build faith on children's creative foundations despite the dreams and ruins all around them. The faith they hear in Jasmine Sullivan's voice and see in Will Smith's smile, encouraged because their talent was nurtured young, more likely to channel their faith like insider traders, investing in the community because they've seen its worth, feeding the Philly pride that always perseveres. Our culture manifests in our children's confidence. But camera crews constantly cut to criminals, cops, and crumbling blocks, the stumbling blocks in our forward progression. Finally, some good news. We control the direction by documenting successes the media's neglected. We're running from shots of us running from shots. Highest homicide since 1995. The nonviolence art and writing can be prioritized. We've seen burning and looting instead of the fires of protests, our youth said. Trump told the world that bad things happen in Philadelphia. They don't know we sewed it into our clothes in defiance. Looking closely at our resistance can change the view from a distance. Finally, some good news for those neighborhoods where children are pushed down paths to prison, called corrupt as if crime for survival is a choice. My project will pave paths far from prison, supplementing the schools challenged and challenging them, who lack the funding for the keys to unlocking their potential, making lives filled with marketable skills to make a living until changing expectations turn once dangerous neighborhoods into breeding grounds for brilliance. My Philly is one where kids can walk without looking over their shoulder, but around at their artistry, which drives my passion to broadcast my creative vehicle, carrying our children's pride, our people's perceptions, Philadelphia's prosperity. Because Philly's kids will mark their place on the world stage and shine there as they should. Finally, some good news.
Wow, Akili. That is excellent, man. Look, I was as inspired and mesmerized today as I heard that as I was yesterday when I saw it in the competition. Where did you get the inspiration to write such powerful words?
Well, when I thought about like the theme, you know, especially now in these times, I just was thinking about, you know, the people from outside of our city looking in, who see, you know, what politicians are saying and what's happening with racial unrest in the city and see the violence. But being from Philadelphia, I kind of understand the talent that people have here, the artistry, the creative potential, especially in our children, the Black community that I can personally speak on. And I wanted people to see that side. So while I wrote about, broadcasting poetry and I guess a creative forum for Philly's children, is that I want people to get the other side that we may get, but that they may not show on the news.
Yeah. So congratulations once again. And I know I said you are a senior at Central. So what are your plans next year after graduation?
My plans are I'm probably going to follow a journalism degree and probably go down that career path. That's actually where my professional and personal interests coincide with the poetry and everything. Because going back to what I said in that poem, I want to really be able to share my own poetry, but also show others that. So I want to go around the city, around the state, around the country, sharing my own work, documenting poetry in different parts of the country. I want to hopefully become Philadelphia's poet laureate one day. I can have a better outreach, so I can really get to the projects and show people the poetry that we have. And I think that's really more vital now than ever, because poetry is definitely giving people hope in these times, like you could see with Amanda Gorman,
That's right.
And just the hope that poetry is bringing people right now.
That's right. Achille, and thank you so much for being here this morning. Thanks for joining us and sharing that magnificent piece with us. You just, once again, represent what our young people are capable of here in the city of Philadelphia. So thank you. President Wilkinson, thank you for joining us as well. Board Member Thompson, congratulations on you as being the new board member, and thanks for coming on. Board Member Sally, Dr. MacGyver, all of our guests who were on this morning, thanks. And as we wrap up this edition of Education Pulse, I also want to give a huge shout out to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, who's also helped us with getting educators prioritized to receive the vaccine and testing students and staff members. So thank you to the Children's Hospital. I want to thank our executive producers, Ania Shop Brown, Evelyn Temple Oates. Also want to thank Jordan Booth, the on-site engineer at WURD. And so with that, it's another episode of Education Pulse. We always run out of time. Achille, keep crushing it, brother. Thank you for being here with us this morning. Joyce, thank you as well.